Craveable Podcast, episode 13, A Chat with Lance.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Craveable Podcast, where real matters. We are your hosts, Katie and Ben, and this show is brought to you by Fossil Farms. We have a very, very exciting episode today. Please welcome Lance Appelbaum.
Yeah.
CEO and founder of Fossil Farms, and we are so excited to have him with us on episode 13 of the Craveable Podcast. Welcome, Lance.
Welcome. Well, thank you. Did you just say episode 13?
Episode
13.
13.
Lucky number.
The Craveable Podcast. Who would think that a specialty meat company would have a podcast?
Well,
I would.
I would only if they were the best at what they did.
It's just music to my
Do I have
ears.
anything on my nose?
No. You say, you already make me sound so good. You make everything sound so good. It's all in harmony.
No, this is very exciting. I think I have been very excited for this episode, and thank you for joining us, Lance, because Ben and I, we have really interesting, fun, and serious conversations on this podcast. And as our tagline says, this show is brought to you by Fossil Farms, and Fossil Farms is brought to you by this gentleman right here. And it's very awesome to be able to create this podcast and have these conversations. And I think we owe a lot of that in part to you. And we want to have a really open conversation today. I know we have some questions, but I think that we're just going to have a great conversation about you and your journey and Fossil Farms. And I mean, I have some things up my sleeve that I want to ask.
Ooh.
But before we jump into that, is there anything that you want to share or say or tell our listeners?
Well, the first thing is that you're making me blush, right? Right. So if you see me blushing, it's just because it's awesome. It's really cool to have not only the platform for you guys to speak, but to see your interactions with each other and to see the passion that you guys bring. You said it's up to me. It was me. It takes a village. Right. And you'll probably hear me say that time and time again. You've heard me say that time and time again, but because of what you guys are doing, it's just incredible. So anything else that I'd like to say? I have one thing. So I've been studying on the podcast, right?
Oh.
And
I'm blushing.
No.
Me too.
Evolution, just like Fossil Farms, you get better with time, like fine wine takes age, right? So I'm literally studying for the podcast, right? And I'm listening to it because I get to hear it every week. And I'm listening to Turkey Talk yesterday, right? And as we're coming back from a business trip, I'm listening to the Great Food Debate that just came out, right?
Love that one.
And it's so good, but I haven't finished it yet. So I'm like 20 minutes in and I really want to finish it, but I have an objection. Can we talk about the one objection I have?
Yes, I heard you two whispering about this before.
Yeah, you said bring it up, so I'm bringing it up. Okay.
What is it?
Ketchup on a hot dog.
Oh, you're anti-ketchup on a hot dog?
Ooh, baby.
Oh, please. Like
A lot of people.
who thought of that as a topic? Did you think of that or did you think?
No, the internet thought of it.
The internet. Right. So you got the topics that way?
Yes, did some general research.
And my childhood of eating ketchup on hot dogs.
Yeah. No,
Me too.
I have immigrant parents. I blame them. They don't know better.
Yeah. So it's mustard all the way for me. Okay. It's mustard all the way for me. But I will say that lately, because we are in the food culinary industry, different types of mustards.
Or do you put relish?
No.
So I feel like you're a hot dog purist then, because that's what I think. I mean, when I think of a hot dog, I think of just the classic, if you're at whatever, a stand, you're eating a hot dog, they have the ketchup, the mustard, and the relish. And I've never really been mustard or relish. I mean, I love pickles, but relish I'm not really interested in. And I just never really, and I said this in the maybe you probably listened to this, but I've never been crazy about mustard. And now I eat mustard in certain ways and never yellow ballpark, never.
No.
Like whole grain and Dijon
Yeah,
and things like that.
Yeah.
I would probably put a little bit of mustard on a hot dog now, but only if there's also ketchup.
Oh, if there's, so you're a mix and match. Okay.
Yeah,
That's understandable. But from a standpoint of having a biased opinion, I'm going to say a bison hot dog.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's You don't.
Yeah, they are.
Argument
You don't
one.
have to say it because I'm here.
No,
but,
no.
Like,
Have I talked about this yet?
No.
That's my favorite hot dog.
clean.
It's my
Yeah, super
favorite
clean.
hot dog. I tell
Clean.
anyone I talk to, chef, home consumer,
Yep.
like, oh, what kind of hot dog? I'm like, we have all these and they're great, but you should just really get the best.
We're going to go so off track because I'm going to be like the Wagyu
No,
hot
it's okay.
dog is unbelievably good. It's so juicy.
Oh, it is very juicy. The Wagyu hot dog is really juicy.
So basically,
Okay.
what we're saying is we got good stuff.
Yeah, we got good stuff. And
Oh
now
my
I want a hot
goodness.
dog.
Well, that's awesome.
Okay, so Lance is a hot dog purist. That's
Just
really.
wanted to bring that up.
Or ketchup hater. Which one?
No,
I would
he's not a
rather
ketchup hater.
hot dog purist.
No, he's not.
Hot dog purist is a better like.
If you want to bring that back up again, like I won't say ketchup hater because like when I was growing up as a kid, my mother, like cooking for us was she burnt everything to a crisp.
Oh, so ketchup.
So it was French fries well done. And everybody that goes out to dinner with me knows I still order my French fries well done.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. You know. But you have to have the good ketchup. You have to have ketchup with a nice crispy fry.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
Okay.
Wait, one more though. Heinz or Hunt's household?
ooh, I'm gonna go with the household. Yeah.
Yeah, the Heinz,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heinz,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna
It's
go
the
with,
only option.
Heinz.
I'm gonna go with that.
That was the right answer.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
so we're gonna dip into the topic here.
Please.
I brought up a lot of things, but Ben typed up like 3 of them. It's fine. So I want to hear. I'm not really going to go in sequence. This isn't really going to make sense, but this is a fun story that you've told me. I've heard of your time in what I'm about to describe
Okay.
several times, and there's a great story that you told me once. Now this is I forget the name of it, but it is let's call it the back in the day Best Buy that you worked at. What was the name of that?
Nobody beats the whiz.
Yeah, Nobody Beats the Wiz,
Yeah.
right? So I want you to tell us a little bit about your time and experience there and how old you were when you worked there. And was that one of your first experiences that truly got you interested in business and maybe ownership? And how did that imprint upon you?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Thank you, Lance.
So, Nobody Beats the Whiz, for those of you that remember it, was the place to go for all of your electronic needs. And I was young. I was 17 years old at the time. I loved my job. I loved talking with people. And
So you worked there.
I worked there.
Okay.
I loved the job. I loved interacting with people. And growing up as a kid, my father and my mother always owned their own business, and I always wanted to work with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they said, you got to go out and get your own experience. You know, that's what you got to do. And Nobody Beats the Whiz was a place where I went and I learned how to interact with people. But from there, it was more like, I can do this, and I could do it differently. And it was there where I got my first interaction with management, where you were interacting at the time, and it was just a busy, busy Saturday. And I wanted to escalate. I wanted to get higher up in the chain. And I was a young kid right out of high school. I was still in high school at the time. And right when I graduated high school, I wanted to become a manager. And one of my managers came to me and said, you want to be a manager, huh? You want to be a manager? I said, yeah. He's like, why do you want to be a manager? I said, I can work good with people. I really think that, you know, I can do it. I can help increase sales and people coming in, and, you know, I just have this different vision of doing things differently. And he's like, okay. He's like, I'm going to give you a chance. All right. I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you maybe 1 or 2 chances. And I said, great. I was so excited. So I was a sales manager in this location, and it was a busy, busy Saturday. And every single Saturday they had meetings where you round up the troops, right? So you had to rally the troops, and we rallied up the troops. And I conducted this meeting, and my manager was giving me the hand, like, okay, you're doing great. It's like, oh, doing great. We're doing really good. And all of a sudden, throughout the day, it was a busy, busy day. And if you've ever been, have you guys ever been to a Best Buy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's like the new age. Nobody Beats the Whiz. And back then they would want you to sell accessories with a sale. They would want you to sell an extended warranty. They would want you to get them on their credit card, you know, at the time. And if you got all these things, it was really good because as a salesperson, you made really high commissions. So I did very well at that point in time. But it was this busy Saturday where I had a salesperson that was having a really hard job closing a sale. And I walked over to him, and I was making sure that my manager saw. I made sure that he was seeing that I was doing a good job. And I was going back and forth through the office and trying to get a credit app filled out. And all of a sudden we were walking toward the end of the store, and my manager was walking with me, and the salesperson was to the right of me. And we were walking, and I said, "Hey, did you see that last sale? I got it. I got everything. I got the warranty. I got the accessories. I got this. I got that." He goes, "Okay. Okay. Got it. And that was it. Right. And then about 15 minutes later, over the loudspeaker, I hear my name being called to the office. I'm, yes. So I go to the office, and he says, "Close the door."
Oh no.
I know this is the
He's
story.
like, "Close the door." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, what's up?" He's like, "You don't want to fail on the first day, do you?" And I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean fail? Like, we're doing great here. This is everything, right?" He's like, "Lance, I know, but it's not about you anymore." I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, "When you were walking before, you said I. It's not about you anymore." I said, "What are you talking about?" "It's we. It's not about I, it's about we. I know you did a good job. When your team does a good job, I know you're doing a good job. Do you understand me? Do you get it? I don't want to fail you the first day." And I looked down, and I'm like, got it. I loved learning. I loved learning that lesson. And from that day, it was never about one. It was about all. Is that the story you're referring
That's
to?
exactly the story I'm referring to.
Because when you were like, because I have so many stories from that. If you're like looking for that one that I remember telling you.
That's exactly the one. And
But,
it's great because you
try
have
to.
very Fossil Farms has very much built a wonderful culture around we and as a group and as a unit, and it's never about I and
or
I
my.
think,
Like I've never say my customer.
No, and I think as you have kind of led me and taught me to be a manager, I think in one of those conversations was when that story came up,
Right.
And it stuck with me. And I said, when we were talking about this podcast, I was like, I'm going to talk about that job Lance had and that story where he learned it's not about I.
Well, the we being a part of the culture is probably one of the most important things that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing that passion to like this type of talk or any type of talk, I get a lot of smiles. You might see me walking around the hallway sometimes, and there's things going on because, like, we put out fires, right?
Oh yeah.
But there's more smiles than there are any type of frowns or anything, because hearing everybody on the phone and seeing what you guys are doing and seeing even what the production crew does for this type of podcast, for this type of platform, so what we might think is small, but we're mighty. And it's, I appreciate the compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's probably a lot of blushing that's going to happen or going on.
Blushing.
So
On all three of our faces.
That's what makes a good team, guys. That's what makes a good team.
Thank you, Lance.
Yep.
So, this is something I know we actually, I told you about this one in advance, but can you describe for us, I could say some of, but really I would like, and I'm sure this is hard, if you can kind of pinpoint what you would consider as your absolute highest and your absolute lowest point since the inception of Fossil Farms between then and today.
How much time do you have?
20 more minutes.
All right. Let's start with the highs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The highs were specifically like two really big times, right? The highs is a constant, like every day seeing the evolution continuously grow. That's just like a natural high, right? But one of them probably was back in 2017. We were asked to do a burger summit at Ellis Island. And the director of purchasing and head of procurement over there and I became very close. And he asked me, does your family have any ties or history to Ellis Island? And, growing up as a kid, you hear the stories of your heritage, right? Well, yeah, I have a tie to Ellis Island. My grandfather came over here really young and had to leave the family back behind, and he was 12 years old, and he's just listening to with amazing. He was telling me, well, we would like to display, we're having this thing called the Burger Summit where we're displaying food through our culture and history. And we would like to have a display of your family here for a year in Ellis Island. What would you say? So to be able to be recognized as having a story, hardworking individual, like the family heritage. And I think it just keeps on growing and evolving. And to having that at Ellis Island, to having a display. So they had some press, they had some media, I had my whole family there. And to see my mother and father see the display, where my grandmother and my grandfather came through and came into Ellis Island, it was pretty rewarding. Okay. So that's like probably the highs. And I could spend all 20 minutes on all other highs, but like that's like the two, like that constant. What was the next one? You said the lows?
We'll bring the mood down.
Some of the lowest points.
It's really not low. I wouldn't say bring it down, because every down has an up, right? And I think that's what we've learned over like 26 years. So there's two in particular. Okay. One was about probably 5-6 years in business. We lost our biggest client overnight. It was like a third of our business, like, was gone.
So this is early 2000s around?
This is like middle 2000s. And we had this really, really big account. And they were jamming, and they decided to leave us to go to another competitor over price. You know, they got a better price, and we lost a third of our business overnight. And we were so young in that time. It was like, what are we going to do? Well, we had to drive further, and driving further means you just got to keep going. Right. It was very, very difficult. I had to lay off 2 people at the time, because I didn't know what to do other than figuring out how to survive. Well, about a year and a half, 2 years later, got a call from that client, and they said, there was a pause at the phone, and they said, Lance, I said, yeah, we would like to come home. And I remember my father teaching me or telling me, go out the same way you went in. So if you know you were going out with a client, go out the same way you would go back in, and let them be acceptable to call you back and not feel pressured. Well, they called and they said, we'd like to come home. And they've been a client still ever since. And they're probably still our longest running client. So that's probably like a low, but became a high.
Yeah.
The next low, and I have to share with the two, was probably, you might think COVID. Oh, COVID. It was not. It was Sandy. It was Hurricane Sandy. And if you ask why, because that was tragic. That was a pandemic. That was the first of its kind in this area. And we really didn't know what to do except keep going and gather everybody and make sure everybody was okay, and then keep rebuilding. So when COVID came around, and I remember having a conversation with you, Ben Lahar, everybody was scared. We were all scared. But I remember saying, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. Mainly because we've never been through something like COVID. Nobody could ever say they've been through something like COVID. But a small organization such as Fossil Farms, we've been through a lot of tragedy. You know, we've been through 9/11. We've been through the 07-08 financial crisis. We've been through Hurricane Sandy. And then COVID was like all three of them wrapped into one, right? But so that's the highs and lows, right? So the highs were great. They still are highs. The lows were really low, but they turned into a high. Because we're sitting
strengthened us and teaching moments and experience.
Yes.
Ben, I've been kind of hogging the questions. Did you have anything you wanted to ask with Lance?
No, you have the list in front of you, so
it's a small list.
I put mine on that.
We're going to
list.
See if they get to the whole list, though.
I'm here for filler material. I want you to lead this one.
Okay, so I know that we've Ben and I have already discussed in early episodes Fossil Farms as a company, its inception, how it started.
Right.
I'll let Ben after this ask about maybe the thing that you said was infamous and I said is famous and not infamous, but I have a question and I'm calling this FFFP.
I'm so loving all of this. I'm just saying.
And so the FFFP is the Fossil Farms Future Plan. And so my question on this is, what do you see in the future for Fossil Farms? What evolutions do you see? What adaptations? What do you see for the future of natural meat? What would you like to see? Anything on FFFP?
Well,
that's a big question.
That's a big
That's why it has
question.
an acronym.
The FFFP.
Mhm.
I like that. That's a first of its kind
Fossil
too.
Farms Future Plan.
Well, we have a podcast. I never thought we would have a podcast, changing with the times, but
Craveable
let's
Podcast.
let's talk about like the big overall plans. It's still from the same thing from day one. We don't want to be the biggest. We just want to be the best. And we're going to consistently evolve over what time is. What would I like to see more of, right? It's incredible now to see that people want to know where their food comes from, right? They are asking more and more questions. And now the questions are getting more and more genuine, right? And they're not only asking questions, they're asking follow-ups to those questions, and they want that. And we've always been a part of that transparency. We've always been a part of that. Like we were waving the flag before everybody else was. And, my brother and I, when we started this and it's been really hard. Like people said, you don't need to tell everything like that. Like it's just food. It's not just food. It's really not because like you are what you eat, right? You are what you eat. So what would I like to see? I would like to see more and more, not only people, but companies getting back into that locale type of need, want, and desire, right? And it can be really explored and consumed into other parts of the country and other parts of the world. When we go to food shows, we just came back from a food show, and we went to this food show and we got to display the brand new retail line. It was awesome, right? It was so clean. It was so very easy to see, and everybody was coming by, and it was the same thing. It was like, wow, this is not a bombardment, but I still get asked the same question time and time again. Isn't everything around you, everything that you see, isn't this all like competition to you? I'm like, no, it's really not, because we all have to eat. Like we have a growing population and we need to eat, right? The fact that people get to have options and choices and we get to kind of carve our way, that's the consistent and the evolution of what Fossil Farms would be. We're going to keep carving our way. We're going to be different than what everybody else is doing. And some people always like to challenge us and say, it'll never work. Well, that was from day one. They said that ostrich would never work.
They still say it's us on the phone.
In a way, they do. But being different is okay. And I think that's going to be the constant evolution. Great question.
Guys, we've been here for over 26 years. We're not going anywhere. Okay?
No.
We know it's going to work.
No.
It's a spoiler alert.
Well, it works because of the people. I don't know wherever the camera is, but it's working. It takes the village.
I think that question almost begs the other question, though, because we're seeing this tide of AI. I've used it for work. I know our marketing team uses it for work. I don't see directly how it's going to tie into like the meat and food service industry, but you have conversations with other business owners, and I imagine this has come up. So can I ask you where you see the future of AI for this industry, if you've had that conversation with people? Sure.
Everybody's in the question of that exact question. It's going to evolve the same way that the internet evolved. It's going to be needed. It's going to be a useful resource, but at the same time, there's nothing better, at least to me, in the human element,
right?
And the human touch. And somebody once told me, it's okay to make a mistake, right? We want things to make a mistake. So I think AI is great because it also enhances and helps productivity and helps this time, right? But I don't think it's going to be like what you used to see in the movies and things controlling everything. I have not. Absolutely not. But, people ask me, it's the same thing. Like if you're not on it, you're behind it.
Right.
So the fact that we're experimenting, we're playing, we're testing it, that's needed. I think that has to happen.
As long as they're not putting weird animals together in a lab or something that we have to sell, and AI is like, why don't I come up with a new animal?
So that's a question, right? Do you think that that's natural? Do you think that that's the way it's intended to be?
I think it's too. I'm pedantic to the point that I'd be like, well, it's a philosophy then. Like, what is natural or preternatural or anything like that?
Right.
Like, a rock is natural, but like you can't eat it, but you can get minerals or a different way that are unnatural through a laboratory.
Right.
Does that make that unhealthy because they put the minerals into vitamins?
Right.
So it's a hard question to answer in my mind. Like,
ask me that. What's natural?
What's natural?
Natural to me is what Mother Earth intended it to be.
Yeah.
It's very simple, right? So do I think if there is a possibility that can like help and feed the starving people out in this world, I'm for it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm for it.
Mhm.
It's not my choice, right? It's not my opinion. It's not my option,
Yeah.
right? I have a choice.
Yeah.
I get an option.
Just like everybody. And
right.
I think it's interesting because you mentioned the word healthy, Ben, and I think healthy and natural, or what someone perceives to be natural, are totally different.
Right.
I personally think, we haven't really said this out in the open, but if just for example, like the lab grown meat thing, I think is super weird. I think it's strange. I wouldn't choose to eat it. I mean, again, there are many benefits, in that, it's not,
Can be.
It doesn't take any land. It doesn't take any resources. There's no, emissions. And yeah, if that's something that in the future is going to be able to help feed millions of starving people, then yeah, 100% I'm for it. But again, I'm just saying exactly what I said.
Yeah. We're going to continue to do it the way Mother Earth intended it to be. And if things are being done in an inhumane or not right way, then let's figure out how we're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you said right in the beginning that there's a way that we could do things correctly globally.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of people choosing not to do things the right way.
Yes.
And luckily for us, or unluckily, we know how hard it is to do it the right way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And extra work that it takes.
Yep. Continual evolution.
But boy, does it make us proud to do it. Right?
Yeah, you guys are
That's
awesome.
true. So
Guys
Ben,
have smiles every
what
day.
about your question?
Which one?
I'll ask Ben's question.
You're going to ask Ben's question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wrote this weeks ago,
We've
or
talked-
days ago, so I forgot.
weeks
Sorry.
ago, we've talked about
We had a lot going on.
the famous trip to Colorado.
Yeah.
You're probably sick of talking about it after 26 years. Are there any details other than the high level details of, you went out skiing, this is what happened, and any other little details or fun tidbits you can share about that trip or about the aftermath that might be informative or entertaining?
Yeah. I mean, the aftermath was like, what are we doing? What do you do when you start a new venture? You start a new business in a brand new industry that's still evolving. But the light bulb goes off, right? So you got to keep playing and keep on going with that, right? I'm still a ski bum, right? I'm still a ski bum. And any other things with that trip? No, other than that was just it was the light bulb moment. And my brother and I, we each figured out what we were good at from the start. And we continued to learn that. However, we learned that maybe too much in a way, right? Where years later, it's like we only wanted to do what we wanted to do. So we took different approaches to the business, right? But I don't remember the exact name of the restaurant, but I can tell you exactly where it was in Breckenridge, Colorado. And going back there to this day, it's still there and it's like a bar and grill. But it's just great to see, so when people say, oh, I go out skiing out west, and they're like, oh, where? Oh, my favorite place is Breckenridge. I'm like, yeah, it's got some history. It's got some history.
So was it ever like a joke? Like, were you and Todd ever just like, we should do this? Ha ha.
Mm-mm.
You were dead serious from the beginning.
Well, no, was it a joke? I don't think it was more of a joke. My brother was always really interested in agriculture and in just being in the country. And thankfully, my parents taught us a long time ago, if you want something, you got to work for it. And they worked very, very hard for a living. And one of the things that my father used to de-stress from was being around horses. So we were around horses our entire life. And my brother became infatuated and in love with that type of lifestyle. So having that element and being aware of what is besides being in the metropolis of the New York metro area, having our parents teach us that, it's not just about here, it's about everywhere, right? That would probably be like one of the biggest things if it's answering some of that question, right? Like he had that vision of, like alternative, like, and when people used to call us, we're in the alternative industry, today it's plant-based, right?
Yeah, right.
I still consider that we're in the alternative specialty, type of market. Yeah.
So I know that your father, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe your grandfather as well, were in the jewelry business, right?
My father and my grandfather were in the jewelry business. Correct.
So you always kind of knew you wanted to be in business, probably when you're in business. Your parents said, go out, go make your own way. Was it always meat? Was it always food? Was it always game meat?
That's a great question. No, I actually wanted to take over my father's business. Like I was going to go into the jewelry business. And I think I said before a while ago, like working at Nobody Beats the Wiz, I wanted to go work for my father, in his business. And he said, you got to learn somewhere else. Then you can come to me. Then you can come in my business. And there was a short period of time where I did go to work for my father in his business. And it wasn't around meat, and there was be no way that we would even think about meat. But I knew that I wanted to be in business, and the jewelry industry, at that time was changing and evolving. It was changing and evolving from my father's industry. My father was, an entrepreneur, and he created something in the jewelry industry that was not being done before, almost like fossil porn.
That sounds familiar to
right?
me.
So, right, very similar, right? Carving your way. He was in the diamond restyling business, and that was popular in the 90s and the 80s and 90s, where you would go to a mall, go to a jewelry store, and it was like a diamond restyling event, like remount your diamonds while you wait. And they would go into different cities every single day. He would have teams of people going into different cities every night with a big line of jewelry. But what was happening was they were getting held up at gunpoint. They would be going out to their car at night, and they would be held up at gunpoint. So my father's company had to hire security to do all of that and to really be security conscious. And for a very short period of time, when I wanted to take over the business, my father said, "You're not taking over anything. You could buy it, and, cause I'm going to have to figure out a way to retire."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" He's like, "I don't know what that means. We'll figure that out. But, we'll have to liquidate half of it and you'll buy a small part and build it up. And I don't know. We'll figure that out." But it was being in the jewelry industry and that security consciousness. I got a scare one time being in that jewelry industry. And, they say timing is everything, right? Timing is everything. And timing was everything with this because, it was a very short period of time. I was working with my father's company. I almost got held up in Valley Stream, New York. I was a little scared. I was young, very young. And I went into my father's office and I said, "I don't know if I want to do this." And he looked right at me and he said, "Lance, don't do this. There's millions of other things and opportunities out there. Figure it out." And here we are. Right. So like you never know when it comes from an idea. And I don't know if you knew that story. I don't know if you guys have known that story.
I didn't know that. I every day.
But it's just from sheer, I don't want to say maybe a little bit of luck, right? Maybe a little bit of luck. But my grandfather always used to say, and I say it to this day, there's something in my office that you guys see all the time. And it says, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Mm-hmm. So to answer that, that's a great question.
Thank you.
That's really, whose question was that? Was that Katie or?
I don't remember.
That was good.
Was that?
I was going to take credit for that.
That was.
Talk about not getting the questions in advance.
I think that was.
Yeah, I think it was me too.
That was good.
Yeah,
it was both of us.
I have a habit of sometimes going on in the question, and like answering.
Because I wouldn't have said, "Did you ever work in the jewelry business? And what are some fun stories you could share? And do you think everything happens for a reason?" I mean, how do you can't go from that.
Well, from jewelry to food, from jewelry to great quality meat, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
But I think that's, we were planning for this episode and, I kind of said, I'm imagining this being a conversation and, thinking back to some of the conversations we've had over the last 6.5+ years and just thinking about the things I know about the inception of this business and your life, frankly. And I was like, I wonder this and I wonder this. And I would like for Lance to expand upon this. And so I think this has been a very informative and candid and really enlightening conversation, in my opinion.
6 years, you said. And I know that.
6.5.
5 years for you.
Doesn't feel like it. Crazy, right?
It doesn't.
Can I say this? And I know I've said it to you before, but I'll say it on air, so it's for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're definitely all blushing.
Thank you for even like Stacy and TJ. TJ's the newest member,
awesome.
Right? Cheers to that.
Yes.
Right? But
production team, you rule.
Everybody. It's just incredible what everybody is able to accomplish. And It's there's the blushing. I'll go that.
I'm sure it's humbling. And what's crazy to say is that we've got one more episode after this, guys, and then season 1 is a wrap.
Season 1 over.
And we should remind them that if you want to see us blush, because apparently this isn't knowledge to everybody, we do show this podcast
on YouTube, right?
On YouTube.
The YouTube
so
channel.
You can see our shining faces. You can watch my hair get shorter when I get a haircut.
Time out.
And then
I'm
it'll
jealous because you have it. Okay.
For now, I'm going to grow it out again for you, Lance. Don't worry. Until it's,
no,
unmanageable.
Don't do that.
Well, listen, you awesome Crave crew. Thank you for tuning in. Lance, awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please remember to like and subscribe. And hopefully in post, they put some funny things in here, making fun of the things I say that are not accurate. And anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
3, 2,